Welcome to the Sisterhood of Sweat. I am here today with David Pereira. David Pereira, a Navy combat veteran and Purple Heart recipient, is the owner of Fenix, a high-end personal training facility located in New Jersey, and the creator of the Beyond Fitness program. As a well-trained fitness professional, David offers valued experience in the ownership and the management of an active, successful physical fitness business. He has success in developing, and executing long-term excellence, as well as a sound record of running a highly efficient, cost-effective operating structure. David has demonstrated the capacity to create long-term business solutions that enhance operations and increase revenue, and is a respected leader with a proven ability to flawlessly implement innovative strategies and help clients achieve their goals. David is passionate about helping successful people develop a mental toughness mindset that allows them to shift their perspectives and excel in more aspects of their lives. He enjoys helping clients excel in fitness and in business, and he knows that high achievers sometimes need help translating what they do in their careers over to their health goals. In short, David helps people become the CEO of their lives. And that sounds really good to me. Today was so great. Wow. Just talking to somebody that's a Purple Heart recipient and a gym owner and just courageous. He served our country as a Navy combat veteran. Just so impressive. And he talked about why building mental toughness is key and how to go about it so we can reach our goals, whether it's swimming the ocean blue or, surviving this pandemic. And it was so good. He talked about having discipline in all aspects of our lives, how the right mindset can lead us to success in both business and fitness. How we do one thing is how we do everything, and how you show up is what shows up. So many good things. I feel like after listening to this episode, you're going to go from thinking about your goals to achieving and crushing your goals, because the mindset, the motivation, I feel like we got our own personal pump you up pep talk. Like if you had ever been part of a sports team, like a winning locker room talk today. And so I hope you guys really enjoy this talk with David. So without further ado, we're going to dive into this episode. I am so excited. I have David Pereira on the show today. Welcome.
Oh, thank you so much for having me, Linda. I appreciate it.
I tell you, I own a gym and I expanded, can you believe it, during a pandemic.
That's
And
wild.
I know, David,
Okay.
that you are an avid gym goer and you
Mhm.
own a gym.
Mhm.
How's that been for you?
It's been an experience, honestly. I opened my gym 3 weeks before COVID shut us down. So I haven't had the full-on year of experience within having the brick and mortar, but we survived what I would like to think is probably one of the biggest storms that we could potentially ever face. The benefit is that, or not the benefit, but the upside is that, other people were dealing with it with us. So we were in it basically together, whether that be other gyms, whether that be the community clients. So as of now, it's been a wild ride. Obviously, most people can, uh, in hindsight, are saying, "What a wild time to like open up a gym." like I had any idea that that would be the case. But you learn for a lot from the moments of stillness in terms of being shut down, and you capitalize on any kind of opportunity that comes your way.
So during this time, what were your thoughts? I mean, at first, just be honest with the audience.
Well, I definitely knew that I have a team of trainers and a physical therapist that's on staff as well. So I knew that to lead them or to lead them in a way that I wanted to be led, I had to keep moving. I couldn't like be stagnant in what was happening. I had to give them all the resources that was necessary, whether that meant like, the forms that were coming down from the government, the applications, things that they could apply for, all the information. That was like the business side of what I was doing. Then the second thing was community engagement. I was like, how do we get involved with helping the community, being a show of force, and not like this stagnant, business that's kind of like shriveling up and just trying to bear the storm. So we dove in head deep. We went live, we went virtual. We actually even did a fundraiser during this time to raise money for first responders and the local health community. And we donated over $7,000 to the local health community for them and first responders when, obviously knew like at the beginning of the pandemic, everybody was running out of supplies and, money was on short supply and all this other stuff. So I knew I had to just keep moving. One, because that's just that's just my energy. I have to figure it out. And two, like I had people that were counting on me, and I couldn't afford to like take my foot off the gas or show anything that less of being I think a well thought out leader.
I love that. And how much of that do you think like stems from your military training?
I would say a good majority of it. However, I don't really know. I can't put like a number on it, right? I feel like I've been um, let's call it promoted to this role, right? Because over time and evolving, you go from the realm of being a trainer and then you move into the realm of like being a leader and then an operator at some point, right? If you're opening up a gym. So like you evolve into these roles. The military, you are promoted into certain ranks and you do move out of like, let's call it specifically for me, you do move out of the clinician side of things and into administration and to just taking care of troops and and outside of being so hands-on. So I would say there's some connection and overlap there because in the military I have transitioned out of doing my day-to-day job and doing more of the administration, the oversight and logistics side of it to being more tactical with everything that's done. So I definitely think there's some connection and correlation between the two, but I can't put a number on it.
I love that you're a leader. What do you think the greatest, leaders, what kind of qualities do they possess?
So they have this certain behavior, I think, and a certain like characteristic, and the way that they lead is the way that they want to be led. So imagine there was a role or a person that was in front of them, and they weren't the leader. Like they would want that person to do X, Y, or Z, right? This is the way I would either bring something up, talk about something, break things down. I think that they have that consistent characteristic of leading the way they want to be led, right? And that in and of itself comes off through osmosis into your peers, your subordinates, whatever, your culture, and all these other things. So I definitely think that that is one of the consistent characteristics across the board.
I love that. I love that so much. And you have, when you are a gym owner or you own a business,
Mhm,
it is really important to know how to lead.
mhm.
And because if you have no followers, you have no gym.
Yes, that is true. And it's even on the, I guess call it on the macro scale, right, of being just an individual trainer, you are a leader, whether or not be on the same scale as the actual business owner, because your clients follow you. They want to be led somewhere, right? They want to listen to you and to follow you to wherever those results and their progressions lie, right? So yes, falling into that role was part of just having that kind of mindset of knowing like, hey, my clients follow me, hey, my trainers at least listen to me in some sense, right, and believe in me, and can we create a brand, can we create a community and a culture around that, and that's kind of where the gym atmosphere kind of comes from.
Oh, wow. Yeah. And I really was looking at, I was reading up on you. I always like to research my guests, and you talk a lot about mindset, limiting beliefs, mental toughness.
Mhm.
And I think right now, during this time that the world has never seen before, that having this mental toughness is a real asset that helps you shift your perspective. How can people be more mentally tough?
Oh, it can be, I mean, it applies differently for from person to person, but I would say broad stroke, there's two ways in which I believe most people can be mentally tough, right? That's one, do what the hell you say you're going to do, right? So follow through, right? And without compromise. And I'll explain that in a bit. The second thing is, uh, don't let anyone's lies get to you. And I'll explain that first. So it's easy in a pandemic, right? We're all had this shared hardship for people to say, it's okay, you endured a pandemic, you should take a break, or you should do this, or you should do things this way. It's all right if you're experiencing that. And that is easy for someone to say because they want to sympathize and empathize with you and think that that's what you want to hear. But it's easy to fall victim and hear that and say, oh, that person's right, I should take a break, right? Or I should be okay with feeling this way. And don't get me wrong, circumstance to circumstance, that may apply and you may be able to, but when you get caught up in a system or a routine of constantly hearing those things, you will actually start to believe this narrative and this rhetoric of like what is actually true and create this own lie in your head, right? That's the first one. Second one is follow through. Do what the hell you say you're going to do. Now I believe like a lot of veterans possess mental toughness for this reason. You think about us being in the military, we have orders, right? So somebody above you or even equal to you who's just in charge that tells you to do something, you got to do it without compromise, without justifying, without putting your comfort level into it. You just got to do it. Let's call that whole experience a repetition. We have thousands upon thousands of repetition in the military of executing orders without any compromise, any justification, without putting
Mm.
our comfort first. Transition into society and what we call the civilian world, that's actually what people lead with. I want to do things at my leisure. I want to do things as it pertains to my comfort. I want to justify everything that I do. Now, when you don't have that as many reps of doing things without compromise, without justification, you aren't, you're easily affected by things that come up, right? Being reactive to your day because you're not so used to doing things and being in an uncomfortable state. And that's where the mental aspect of it comes in, is that it's all repetition at the end of the day. How long can you kind of make yourself uncomfortable? How much can you do the monotonous longer than the next person to generate the result?
And I know I can so relate to what you're saying about this uncomfortableness.
Mhm.
And many people will come to my boot camp, and I'm sure to your training or whatever exercise you're hosting at your gym. And the minute they feel uncomfortable, if they're not used to that feeling, what do you feel it is that they want to do?
Well, of course, most want to place a ceiling and a governor on themselves, right? Like, and in some sense, they are right, right? If there's a person that hasn't worked out or doesn't have this, exercise and fitness baseline to complete the work, of course, they have some limit as to how well they can perform, and that's their ceiling. For those who are fit and excel, and then do also hit those points in the workout where they don't, do the work or they want to stop. It's depending upon like how much do you want to, I don't want to call it suffer because suffer sounds very extreme, but how much do you want to put yourself in that pain cave? Now, I love boot camps. I love, hit classes. I love those
Yeah.
things. Depending on how it's, unraveled and how it's programmed, specifically if it's a one-on-one client or it's a small group setting, you have the opportunity to teach something in that hard experience of a hard workout, right? If your hard workout comes and goes and you learn nothing about taking advantage of the mental exercise that just could have happened, then you lose that component. Again, to pivot into the military, a lot of the stuff we do is somewhat hard, somewhat difficult, somewhat intense. But then they always have some kind of mission attached to it, some deeper meaning attached to why we're doing anything, the reason why we have to be so precise, so exact, so specific about anything we do. So that gives different note to and a different like energy to what the hell we're actually doing. So as it pertains to group fitness and a hard class and a hard workout, we have the opportunity as instructors and coaches to make sure that we're able to teach through that hardship of what that person just completed.
And I really love that. And I love the idea of putting a mission to what they're doing, because when you get in your car, generally you have a destination in mind and that's how you arrive at it. And I think many times people work out and they have no specificity, sorry, specifics to what they're trying to achieve. And if you can put a mission to what you're doing, you're much more likely to achieve it and to arrive at your destination. How can we get people out of their own way and into their mission?
Oh, that too can be answered in many ways, but I definitely think the biggest thing is that if you are not confident in your ability levels, you will need some level of accountability first, right? So you have to be held accountable, and you have to sometimes waive that accountability partner, waive that mission, that deeper meaning, that why in front of that person, right? So yeah, you get in the car, you have a certain destination, but like you even look outside and it's raining, you're like, no, fuck that, I'm not going, right? The accountability partner is like, no, your why, your reason for getting there. You get in the car, I don't care if it's raining, you know what I mean? So I definitely think anybody who's dealing with that and anybody who's in that sort of position, you need an accountability partner. You need to highlight that you don't have the proper skill set just yet to do these things on your own and execute.
I love that. That is great. And that is so true. I see that every day in clients that I have. I personally need accountability.
Mhm.
Like if I want to compete and do well on, at my competition, I'm not going to get there by giving myself a pass, like we talked about earlier, by not having anybody but myself to hold myself accountable. I think that it's all right to get a coach. Actually, I think everybody should have a coach,
Yeah,
because
yeah.
if you're a coach, you're a better coach. If you are a person that's trying to achieve something, having that accountability is the game changer.
I couldn't agree more. And I think it just or it goes over people's head that they don't realize how many coaches who have coaches, right? Like they think it's some some esoteric philosophical thing that doesn't really exist, right? Like why does the doctor need help? He should know what a clean bill of health is, right? And all this other stuff. Like so for coaches, they're like, why do you need help? You should know how to do this stuff, right? And yeah, but if we want to be better, we know the level of sharing that experience with someone else who's going to hold us accountable will bring, and ultimately doing something and sharing something like in terms of an experience like that, in terms of a progression or building a career or building this fitness journey, it's so much better when shared, right? I oftentimes find some clients who come in organically, they are sometimes wanting to come in like under the radar. They don't want people to know that they're, seeking help, right? And that is like counterintuitive, counterproductive. You're actually, kind of losing out on some of your own experience,
Yeah.
and there's a lot of politics and maybe community that can go into somebody saying that, but at the end of the day, it's like coaches have coaches. That's why they excel. They don't just end up where they are. They have mentors. It's no different. So step into that role and humble yourself and, leave your ego.
And backing up, speaking about what you said about flying under the radar, I think, people like to fly under the radar because then they don't have to be committed. Or if they if they feel like they weren't committed or they didn't stick with it or they didn't reach their goal, then nobody's really going to know but them, or there's not going to be this judgment. But I would just say, if you really have a goal, it's also about investing in yourself. You know, if you invest in yourself, that's what brings your level of commitment. If you say out loud that you're going to run the Spartan race and record time, you're probably going to come close, if not like nail it,
Mhm.
because you're setting that goal by speaking it out loud, and you're a lot closer to achieving what you invest in and what you commit to versus, oh, I'm going to try. No, I'm from the state of like, no, let's do it.
Yes, you're putting that juju out in the world, right? And
Yeah.
the universe is going to reciprocate and or just kind of keep you honest along the way. I definitely think that's important, right? And you need that kind of community, you need that kind of accountability, and that's where most people, most clients come in and become successful, right? They're either the client who's asking the right questions, a lot of questions, they're engaged, they're also getting their family involved, their friends involved. Those are that's the foundation for long-term success when in terms of in terms of accountability. Imagine if your whole family knew that you shouldn't be having something right, or you should be out on a walk instead of Netflixing. They're going to hold you accountable. But I definitely think that's this is where the mentality comes in, the doing that kind of hard work on where somebody is psychologically, right? And this all falls within someone's limiting beliefs,
Oh,
right?
yeah.
And
Hmm.
before they even consider the goal that they want, they've already placed some kind of judgment on their self and what they're actually able to achieve. I just wrote about this the other day, and I said, like, you know what some clients want, they believe doesn't exist yet, right? And
Hmm.
therefore, for them to come into this experience, they just don't see it for themselves. And as a coach, you obviously have to have the communication skills, the systems in place to help them understand it in terms of the direction in which they're going, right? So that is definitely a big part in the coaching process across the board. Fitness, nutrition, business. You have to be able to explain to someone in a way that allows them to see the growth that they could potentially make.
And I love that you said that, because I think many times, and I run a facility dedicated to women. Women, a lot of the times, when they come in, they have to justify to themselves why they're asking for help, why they're
Mhm,
hiring a coach.
mhm.
And I think that comes from that limited mindset, that limited belief. Why don't you think you're worth investing in? Or why don't you think, like, why do you think you have to do everything all by yourself? And why is there so much judgment against bettering yourself? And I think just all these, and then when they come and they come to a class, possibly, the limited beliefs that circle around in the mind, like maybe they're doing something and they're like, oh, I really suck at this. And they're judging themselves so hard, and they think everybody else is judging them. And they're just all in their head, and the thought processes are not empowering. How can you help them flip the switch? And what are some tips for everyone out there to get out of their head and stop telling themselves these stories that are self-defeating?
Yes. So when I deal with anyone who has substantial limiting beliefs, but not even substantial, but just limiting beliefs that put them in a position to prohibit their progress and kind of cause inaction, I ask them about their life, right? And I typically find out about them. And relative to each person, to you, Linda, to myself, my life is the hardest. Your life is the hardest. Like that person's life is the hardest. We also are the busiest, right? You're the busiest. No, this person's busy. So relative to each person, their life is the hardest, the busiest. They have the most stress. And I say, good, I believe you. Now, how are you going to use that to your advantage? Because now that why me negative response where you curl up into a ball and you create these limiting beliefs, I say, why not you, right? Your experiences should have made you better. If you are going to tell me that you are too busy or you're more stressed or you had this kind of upbringing in childhood, show me how it made you better, how it gave you the edge. And this kind of not overnight flips a switch, because I kid you not, this has to do with a lot of upbringing, right? A lot of,
Right.
personal beliefs about relationships with, one another, with food, with fitness, their own body. It has a lot of, has a lot to do with that. But it goes into understanding, like, I shouldn't be so hard on myself. I should use my experiences to my advantage. Okay, let's get to work, right? And understanding, like, I continue to use that cycle. I shouldn't be so hard on myself, but I should be better than these people. Let's get to work, right? Like that constant challenge, that constant challenge. And I definitely think that that is the one of the best ways to kind of flip that switch, using your story to kind of help you. You don't have to be famous. You don't have to be a best-selling author. Use your story to show why you should succeed and you should excel. That is it.
Perfect. Great, great answer. And I know everybody out there, when they listen back to this, they're going to find so many great tips. But one of the things I find many of my clients, as I've been in the gym world for like over 30 years, they have trouble. They get started, they're all gung ho, but they have trouble maintaining any discipline. And not just in working out, but just in almost all aspects of anything they start. They're all gung ho, they get started, they're going to crush it, but then they just have the trouble maintaining discipline. How
Mhm.
can we maintain better discipline in all aspects of our life?
Yeah, and this is a very unsexy answer right here, right? But the difference maker lies in the monotony, right? What your success is over time is dependent upon how well and how long you want to do the basics, right? So when we start off with the basics in terms of nutrition or fitness, it's whether or not you're going to do that long term, right? And that, when someone starts, is cool. It sounds good. It's new, right? Which is when we get that good honeymoon phase of whatever they're doing. But then when the work of doing the same thing, 6 months, 8 months, years, 2 years down the line starts to set in, people start to question whether or not it's actually going to get them there. It's long term in terms of your approach, right? People have to be aware that what they're stepping into is a lifestyle choice, right? And a lifestyle change that is going to require more time in it than you spent out of it. Now, let me make sure I explain that, right? The 6 months, 8 months in which you had the honeymoon phase and now you're questioning life because it's getting boring. Okay, what about the 20 years in which you spent like on your countless walks to the fridge and constant drive-throughs and all this other stuff? Your 8 months is nothing compared to those 20 years. So for you to compare the two or not compare the two, you have to spend more time in it in order for you to say it's not worth it. We have to flip that inverse. So that's definitely how I would do, I would skin that cat right there.
And I love it. And I don't know why this story popped in my head when you were saying that, but I just think about when I was competing. And at the beginning, early on, I had no clue about nutrition because I was doing Miss Fitness. So I was doing
Mhm,
a fitness routine and I was young
mhm,
and relatively young compared to where I am now.
mhm,
And I just didn't understand the nutrition. And I'm at, there and expecting to do well. But the thing is I didn't understand the work that I needed to put in. And one of my friends said to me something that really registered. Why would you expect to finish where people are finishing that are nailing like their nutrition to the wall?
mhm,
And what that spoke to me was, yeah, if they're going, like, I'll say balls to the wall,
mhm.
and I am just, still having whatever pancakes, I don't know.
Yeah, yeah.
How can I expect to do well? And so it's the same with you, whatever work you put in to
Mhm,
something over time is going to pay the dividends of the work that you have put in is what you're going to receive back.
mhm,
So be honest with yourself. What are you truly putting in to
mhm.
what it is you want as
Yeah,
an end result?
Yeah, I completely agree. And for your case and for what you were doing, you were in a competition mode, right? It had a finite date in which that competition was kicking off. Whether again it rained, it snowed, a tornado came through, barring any of that stuff. So anytime you compromised anything that you were supposed to do for nutrition, guess what happened to that date? It got one day closer. It didn't get one day further because you wanted to make it comfortable for yourself, right? And anyone who's that's why I love people when they have these goals, right? And they sometimes have dates because they're predicated on events and life events. But you have to understand what you do now when you put a deadline on your goal. Everything now becomes that much more surgical. Everything becomes that more crucial and has impact. Now, whether or not you're doing a competition like fitness, or you're doing a run and a marathon, like all these other things, like that's going to depend upon what you actually feel like you have the bandwidth to do, and you have to be honest with yourself, because most people want results yesterday, right? They want results yesterday. They want the work of doing nothing, right? So that's completely fine. It's just not realistic, right?
And,
And we
and
just have to make sure as coaches we explain that.
And the biggest thing I'll have to say, because it relates to everything we're talking about today, is the game changed for me, number one, when I was honest with myself.
Of course.
Number one. Number two, the accountability of having a great coach.
Mhm.
And number three, shifting my mindset
Mhm.
on why I deserved to do the thing and do well at it.
Mhm. I, I couldn't agree more. That is like those are three things that are definitely essential in you getting the level of success that you obviously want, and that is the separator. Some people will have two of those things. Some people will have one of those things, and you have to understand how it doesn't take you as far, right? And that's not to say that those three are only things that can get you there, but you have to understand like where these things start to come in, and how people for more or less want to half-ass it and have half of that, right? Have some of it, have it when it's convenient, so on and so forth. And I definitely think that you have to be the adult in the situation. I always preface it when I meet clients in some way, especially when I work with executives, because putting things into business terms for these guys, it just makes sense and it hits a chord. So you have to imagine that you're sitting in a room, and in that room is three people. It's the person that you were, it's the person that you currently are, and it's the person in which you want to be. Now, if you have that turn and have that conversation with the person that you were, and they were like, "Hey, man, how'd you get there? How'd you get to that level?" And where you currently are, you'll turn and you'll say, "Hey, I had to put in this amount of work. I had to grind for this many years. My head was down. My foot was on the gas. I got these results, right?" And then you turn and you ask the person for where you want to be. "Hey, man, how do I get there?" And it's going to require something similar, but more, right? You're going to have to include more things, whether it's accountability, education, the right people on your team, so on and so forth. It's going to require more, right? Because what got you here won't necessarily get you there, right? And we have to understand that that is an ever evolving game that we're trying to play, specifically to our goals, and trying to change and grow.
And showing up like the person that you think achieved that goal, like start showing up as, even though you may feel 100 miles away
Mhm.
from being the fittest person or being the best business mind, if you start showing up like you think the person shows up that has already attained that, you'll achieve it. And I think once you get success in one area, you can apply the same formula to another area. So you say how you do one thing is how you do everything. How does that apply here?
Well, that definitely applies. Like we can do an audit of someone's life and just kind of see how they could either optimize and pick some things up, and how they are pretty extreme in some aspects of their lives that they don't realize. Like that doesn't mean like, the Jeff Bezos of the world is going to turn into the next Arnold Schwarzenegger of the world, right? Like he's not going to apply his business principle to bodybuilding and now be the best. But we can see how he does some things well and extreme, within business. He probably does some other things within his lifestyle and his habits that gotten to that point. Now, if I were going to, I mean, actually, I think Jeff Bezos is pretty jacked, by the way. But if I were going to train him, right, and have to coach him, I would say, hey, you're pretty extreme. You're pretty glued to, some kind of habits, right? We need to change some of those habits to optimize your performance, right? Potentially, right? So that's how we can do that audit as it pertains to that. If we're going to talk laterally, if we're going to assess a regular person, right, and someone who doesn't have a background of fitness and doesn't really have this kind of bad habits, let's call it, that they know of within the fitness realm. Well, I'm going to look at their line of work and I'm going to say, well, are you as busy as you say you are? Are you as productive as you say you are with your line of work? And most people will say yes. And I'm like, over the course of knowing them for a couple weeks and seeing what they do day in, day out, I'm going to see how they apply their level of structure when it comes to fitness and nutrition. Are you hitting your meals? Are you preparing the way you need to? Is it the same way you would prepare for a meeting? Like, you know what I mean? And you knowing someone, you can understand how you can make these parallels. It's not an extreme science of saying how you do one thing is how you do everything, but people don't realize the impact in which, or the level of correlation that it has across the board, right? Within their own family lives, their own work lives, and obviously as it pertains to how they handle their own life.
And if you don't like, I mean, like, how are you showing up? Like, is that would be my question. If you don't like what you're receiving in anything,
Mhm.
how are you showing up? Like, be honest with yourself. Like, if you're showing up to a boot camp, are you putting forth all of your effort, or are you like, oh, that's hard, and I'm only going to do 3 of those, though, that we're supposed to do 25?
Yeah, and you get some version of that, and you also may get some people who, half-ass it within there, right? You have some person who feels like they can't do it, right? Because
Yeah, right, because it's
they're
hard.
insecure or
It's all right
they're,
to dumb it
they're
down a little.
concerned. And then you have the people who are like, you know, they know they could have gone harder, but they're like, oh, it wasn't that bad. You know what I mean? Like, I, I used to go to CrossFit, and you'd get some new people who didn't understand pacing for intensity, and and all this other stuff. So they'd either walk out like killed, or they'd walk out not like everybody else is on the floor, right? They'd be the first person cleaning stuff up. They wouldn't understand like that level of pushing themselves. And it,
Yes.
and it does happen to, it comes over time, right? It's not going to be an overnight success, but it is about an honesty thing. It is about being or showing up, like you said. I
And you don't have to do 25. If you feel like you can't do it at all, if the hardest thing that you did was 5 burpees that day,
Mhm,
then that is effort. It doesn't have to show up like the person that's doing push-ups at the speed of light.
mhm, mhm. And that's, again, being depending on where you are on your journey and stepping into the realm of fitness or nutrition or whatever. uh, you have this idea that you need to compare yourself to the next person, or you need to compare yourself to the pace and race that they're running, and you don't. Honestly, as coaches, I can't scream that louder. Like, everyone's journey is different, which means everyone's pace is different. So how are you to compare yourself? There's a difference between stepping on the competition floor and judging yourself that way, and there's a difference between, like, trying to have fun with it along the way, and knowing that I shouldn't expect to swim as fast as Michael Phelps. It's just not gonna happen.
Exactly.
That's not going to
Yeah.
happen, right? But I do have to, try my best. I do have to show up. That's why I think, specifically, and this is something I really work hard with people to understand, is that I care less about the goal. I care more about who you become in attaining that goal, right? So,
Right.
like, you have this goal of, getting ready for a race, right? You have some fitness competition, whatever the case may be. You understand how there are some other variables that have to go into place: the person that you need to become, the things that you need to sacrifice, the trade-offs you need to make. That person is what I care about, because now you have an idea of, like, oh shit, this is when I need to keep it if I want to stay there, right? Like, clearly, like, I don't need to run a sub 4 mile all the time, but if I got there, great, right? Um, so that is more of the work that we want to challenge clients to do, is like, understand how we want you to be a better person. If you just focus on getting to, 15 pounds lighter, you lose focus on all the other stuff that's happening around you that actually got you there, you know? So that is definitely super important when it comes to explaining and breaking down clients like the process and why, the speed doesn't necessarily matter as much as the direction matters, you know?
And I think another mentality that's important to possess is like letting go of the judgment that I think we judge ourselves so harshly, we compare ourselves so harshly. And I just remember being in, I'll call them, I was playing with the big dogs. I was running with the big dogs. And I was like a small fish at the time. And I had to be, it was a little like, whoa, like I'm overwhelmed. These people are so like amazing. But I had to be like, okay, you know what? Yes, they are. And I am going to be the best me that I can be. I'm not going to let that intimidate me. Instead, I'm going to let it inspire me to just go full out and be the best Linda I can be. And whatever that shows up as, I accept it versus all this judgment where we're like, I'm not as good as that person, or we don't feel enough, or whatever it is that makes us quit and stop believing in ourselves. But yet we could flip it on its head and be like, I accept myself as I am right now, and I'm going to get a heck of a lot better.
Yes, and comparison is that thief of joy, right? We all heard it, right? And once you compare, you kind of lose that or give that part of yourself away. But that mindset in which you had and just now, and you explained, it's exactly why I said use your story, right? Like you were either playing with the big boys and you saw it as, wow, I'm here and I shouldn't be here. I must be doing something right, or wow, I'm here and let's just have fun with it.
What the heck am I doing here?
Right, what the heck am I doing here? Let's just have fun with it, right? Like that's the ways it should be seen and perceived. It's because like you didn't get there by accident, let's call it, right? You didn't do it by accident in a way. And that why not me aspect is like determining on how well, not to say well you execute, obviously there are many variables that go into your level of sport, but in terms of like where your mindset is and having that finish as a positive or a negative experience, it's like you have to have grasp, you have to have that level of depth of like what am I actually going to get out of it. And it's like you're like, I'm going to be the best version of myself, show up and think about it in this way. What's the worst that can happen? What's the worst that can happen in that situation, right? And being confident and comfortable about whatever those situations look like.
And I think sometimes like people are embarrassed to look stupid, like they feel, or not able to do something or unable to execute.
Mhm.
And I think if you can get those things out of the way, because I know I had a client that showed up to my boot camp. It was outdoors. It was probably 95 degrees outside that day. And we were running the lake in Kangoo boots, which are kind of a bouncy shoe. It's
Mhm.
kind of almost like a rollerblade, but it bounces.
Yeah.
And we were doing TRX. And the very first day, she thought, what the hell am I doing here?
Mhm.
And, and then she came to my diet workshop, which was 10 weeks. And when she showed up, her thoughts, I would have never known them if she hadn't expressed them, were, I'm the largest person in the room. What am I doing here?
Mhm.
And I want to just like say, just quickly, she lost 100 pounds with me. But
Mhm.
I think we all want to know sometimes, what are we doing here? And if you can answer that question for yourself, like flip it on its head, what are you doing there?
Yeah.
And if you know what you're doing there, then you're going to get out of your own way and begin to reach heights you never expected.
And that's using your story, that you can play this internal game, right? You can have this chip on your shoulder, to show up for yourself because, I want to use my hardships. I want to use, my, my life as an example. For me specifically in the military, right? And this is what kind of it kind of makes 98% of my decision and it's kind of how I weigh it. I always say, what's the worst that can happen, right? And this is the benefit many people have. I think military is just one, sector, one market in which people can have some different experiences, but we have a frame of reference, right? Let's call it that circumstance or that environment that this person was in. They can imagine, they can think back to some time in which either that situation was harder or that situation was worse or something was more embarrassing, and they made it through that. So honestly, tell me, what is the worst that can happen? Obviously, in the military, I have an extreme of thinking like, well, you could lose your life, right? So, and when it comes to business, right, when it comes to a workout that's hard, I'm like, what is honestly the worst that can happen? Very extreme parallel to make, but I don't advise anybody to make that one. But that's kind of where I'm at. Like, think about having a frame of reference in your life. Was graduate school hard for you? Cool. Well, compare that to where you are now. Is this a walk in the park? Can you prep your meals? Right? You know what I mean? Like, you know what I mean? Like, these are like, I think you could do it, right? If and understanding that these are just all tools. You got to know which light to switch, which doorknob to turn to get access to what it is you need to think in that moment, right? Whether it's showing up for yourself because you're always afraid to be selfish, or you are constantly afraid to be selfish and do something good for yourself, and you put your health and nutrition on the wayside for the past X amount of years, or you have to use your story and be like, I have a chip on my shoulder, I need to show up for myself, and I deserve to be here, whatever the playing ground calls for in that moment.
Wow. This has been such a great conversation today and so empowering. And I think people are going to be so motivated after this to go and start crushing some of their goals. And David, I am just so impressed that you're a Navy combat veteran and you received a Purple Heart. What do you think is your main takeaway from that experience?
Wow, I have so many takeaways from that experience. This is going to sound harsh, depending on what mindset you might meet me at, but life doesn't care, right? And what I mean by that is, like, if anybody's unfamiliar with what receiving a Purple Heart is, it's being wounded in combat, right? And not that life is that extreme, but if you consider it an unbiased person, it's going to favor those who put the work in. At the end of the day, they can care less about your feelings, care less about your emotions, cares less about the weather. Life is this unbiased person, and life doesn't care oftentimes how you feel. So there is a time for resting. There is a time for reflecting and all this other stuff. But there isn't room for that to be a constant state. You have a very limited time here on this rock, and you want to take full advantage of it. Whether that's like what you're capable of, what your body is capable of, the level of impact you're able to make. So my biggest takeaway is that life doesn't care. It could have been over just like that for me, and it's on me to take full advantage of every opportunity, or every chance to grow personally. So it's, again, a little bit extreme, a little bit harsh, but if you see it for what it's worth, and it is that frank, I definitely think people will see that as a value.
Well, I think how you really truly help people is by being straightforward, honest, and sometimes blunt, because when everything is sugar coated, it doesn't always get to the heart of the matter. And I think being straightforward and honest and like being of service, like you're still like, I thank you for your service. You're still of service. You're still out there on the front lines. And I just salute you 100%.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Yeah. This,
I appreciate it. Thank you so much.
yeah. So great. And I love all of the value you brought today. And where can people get a hold of what you have and reach you on social media?
Okay, thank you. I am very active on Instagram. My Instagram handle is D and 2 underscores and my last name Pereira, Pereira. And my gym's Instagram is Fenix, spelled Fenix dot Englewood, Englewood. So you could obviously reach out to me, DM me, follow me, I'll follow you back. If you have any questions, obviously following up on today, I love to talk, I love to mentor, I love to coach. So it can be about literally anything. I think the strong pillars in which I bring value are within fitness, business, and nutrition. But if you have you have anybody who's going to the military, you have military questions, send them my way as well. I entertained one of those earlier today. So, but whatever works, you can definitely reach out to me on those platforms.
I love that. I love that so much. And I feel like you should have a course. I
Uh,
know this is probably corny, but rising from the ashes with David at the Fenix or something.
I love it. I love it. We do have an app that's going to be dropping probably towards the end of the first quarter. That's going to be a fitness and nutrition app. I do work one-on-one with clients within fitness and business in terms of like the coaching aspect for that. A little bit separate of outside the gym, but I don't promote that. It's not my bread and butter. I keep a small, intimate group, but definitely reach out to me if you want to know more about that. And we can definitely talk about how I use principles that I've learned in the military to stimulate growth within fitness and nutrition and business.
Love it. Love it so much. Lastly, what is your favorite quote?
Ooh, that's tough. What is my favorite quote?
Are
You
you a
know,
quote person?
I am a quote person. Trust me. I have I have a threefold mirror, and I write three sayings on the top. Like every month, I'll have a new one, and I always just look at it. For me, I think one of the best quotes and just most impactful, and it's going to sound very cliche, is to trust the process and and be okay with like where you are, but trust the process. Like time will show you whether you're doing something right or wrong, and it's whether or not that you can sustain doing the monotonous, doing the boring, doing the arduous work of the everyday for long enough, honestly. So trust the process, definitely, since you caught me off the off my guard. This is the one I'll go with for now.
I love it. Hey, I say it all the time and I say it to myself. So it is a good one. And I appreciate you so much today. Thanks so much for coming on this episode of the
Oh,
Sisterhood of Sweat.
Linda, thank you so much for having me. I'm hoping everyone found some value out of this. If not, you got to hear me yap for 45 minutes.
I think it was great. I know everybody will find value. Make sure you guys reach out to Dave on social media. And thanks again, Dave. Thanks everybody for listening.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.